Welcome to Introduction to Houdini 11 Lighting and Shading for Artists. In this training video, we'll cover the basics of lighting and shading using Houdini 11, and we'll cover it in a way that most artists will be able to easily understand. The goal of this video is to have you creating beautiful lighting and shading without the need to write any code or create any node networks. So, the distant light was intended to mimic sunlight. What we know about the sun is, first of all, it's not infinite in size. Second of all of its light rays are not perfectly in parallel. Some of them are, but certainly not all of them. If all the light rays were parallel, there would be no penumbra to the shadow. But there is. In a distant light, there is no penumbra. All the lights are perfectly sharp. And we can see that simply by looking at a render view. So, the distant light is a kind of a rough approximation of sunlight. It renders very quickly because it doesn't have to create the area light type shadows that create the nice softening penumbra with distance. Let's take a look at the interface for the environment light. So like any other light, it has your basic transform tab. Under the light options, you can select a light color. For example, if we pick a kind of a sky bluish color, that's what we'll get. Typical light intensity. We can also put an environment map in the background, so if we want to use image-based lighting and we have an appropriate image, we can drop that in, and whatever the color of the environment map is, that's the color of light that will be coming in from all directions. This is actually particularly useful if you have, for example, a panoramic photograph of a sky with different colors in it. Maybe there's a sunset with a nice, beautiful orangey amber on one side and maybe a deep blue on the other side. You can get some really stunning lighting effects. So now there is no grid occluding light coming from below, and you can see that the object is now fairly evenly lit, including from below. If I clip to the positive Y hemisphere, now light is only coming from the horizon and above and not below, and that feels a lot more like natural skylight. So this is a very fast way of creating skylight as though it were from above, and it doesn't force you to either put an image that's black on the bottom half or create a ramp that's black on the bottom half. Simply turn this on and you instantly get a fairly realistic feeling skylight. We'll go to the render menu and we'll pick the GI light, and that'll drop a GI light into our scene. Now, a GI light won't all by itself add illumination to the scene, but what it will do is it will create a radiance from other direct light sources, and it will also enable us to store photon maps that we've created from those irradiance solutions. But it won't add light to the scene by itself. For example, if we go to the render view, we'll see that nothing is rendering. We'll need to actually add a light source. So let's go ahead and add a distant light. So we can see now that the samples are much closer together. There's much finer detail. And then for our final renders, of course, we'll switch back to indirect global photon map. Now, one thing that's crucial in order to get this irradiance happening is in your ROP under shading, you need your diffuse limit set up. By default, actually, this is set to 0. And we'll see when that's set to 0, although we may have a GI light turned on and a photon map location selected, we may have generated our photon map. We'll see that there aren't any indirect lighting bounces. I don't want this to feel like an overcast day. I want it to feel like a directly sunlit day. So what I need to do is sharpen up that shadow, and that's where this distant light setting sun angle comes into play. What you'll notice is that as I increase this angle, the shadows will get softer and softer, to the point where if I go, for example, all the way up to 90 degrees, the sunlight is actually going to, let me just turn off the skylight here. I'm just going to disable this so we can look at just the sunlight. So now we have just the sunlight on. If we take our sun angle all the way to 90 degrees, well, it also feels like an environment light. It's because the light size is really huge, and that's the size of the light is what determines the sharpness of the shadow. Now I'll just switch between these two renders, and you can see the diffuse limit set to 1, you have a whole bunch of really beautiful fill light being bounced up from the ground plane, and also from the aircraft down onto the ground. It didn't exist before. Do you see that? So we'll just let that render resolve for a moment. So this is what's coming in the future. Okay, let's look at an alternate method of lighting this little biplane up using skylight sunlight. Without using the skylight, we'll use a couple of distant lights, switch them into sunlights, and we'll look at using the environment light as a backdrop without contributing illumination to the scene, so we can put a backdrop color in if we often don't just want to under our black. And because environment lights, you can use a color or a ramp or an image, you could put a panoramic image back there or an HDRI or whatever. And we'll also look at using a GI light to generate a photon map and create multi-bounce lighting without the need for physically based rendering. So we have diffuse lighting only from the image in the backdrop. You can see that it's slightly directional. The way to tell that it's slightly directional is that the shadows are a little bit sharpened up, which means you can find a directional source to this light, which means there's a bright highlight in this image off to the upper right, probably behind camera a little ways. And that may be what you want in the image, or it may not. In the case of this render, we were looking for more of a direct sunlight. So we could either find an HDR image that has a sun in the image with the full illumination range captured, or we could just use this as our global illumination lighting, our environmental lighting, and we could turn our sun back on, and then we have control over our sunlight direction. And that works quite well too.